All right, here I am. Here's where I am. Where's that direction? That direction is facing toward Courtney Campbell River as the crow flies, all right? I'm swinging east. There's Mount Arrowsmith up in the hill there. The hill, that is the hill, that's the mountain. And I'm on the end of a dead-end logging road. So here I am, looking for a deer. Alrighty then. Oh. Not a bad place to hang out for a little bit, I think. Definitely a place to get rocks thrown at you the odd time, I'd imagine. I'm at the foot of Mount Arrowsmith. And I've never been here before. Sarah's brother's over, and together they want to put a bathroom in the downstairs of the house. So, I'm out of the face, they can have at it. So, I'm going to see if I can find her that one more deer, but it's pretty tough. With black-tailed deer, from what I've learned through my lifetime, you have to learn an area, and it takes a long time. You got to learn it all. Learn what the trails are, if there's deer there, which way they go, what time of year they're there, where they bed, where they feed. And then you put the puzzle together, never quit, and then you eventually start cutting tags. So I'm like fresh out of the womb here. Wow. And the amount of deer here is tragic. The whole Vancouver Island's tragic, and the reason being was I'm not against logging. I'm against irresponsible logging practices. And what they did here on the island, they started to shave it off. And when they first punched in the road, started making clear cuts, that blew up the predator population. So they shaved off the timber, the big mature timber, and they created a shit pile of predators. And the predators overpopulated rapidly, cleaned off the majority of the ungulates, and the big mature timber didn't really come back yet. And that's what feeds them big time. Big trees, big bucks, I always say. So it's kind of sad. The deer have never really recovered. There's a few here and there. The majority of them are in towns, right? But there's still a handful running around. I just might have to go back over to the mainland in my home turf. See if I can go grab one there, maybe. So anyway, I had to grab Sarah's rifle. So I went to grab my 243 and I totally forgot I donated my scope off of that rifle to put on her new rifle. 7mm 08. With her pink sling. Now, who do we got? Let's see here today. I think I'm going to hang out here for a bit. Then I might pull up the binoculars and scan across this mountain up in the snow and see if I can see any game trails. Whatever, it's still good to be out, right? I'd rather be out here than anywhere else. Meaning out in the real world, out in the woods. Now, what do we got? A friend of mine sent me, I don't know why he even bothered, but he sent me a link to some channel. I guess, I don't know. I mean, there's all sorts of people with channels, right? There's people that really want to have a following. There's people that want to be a YouTuber. There's people that want to be a celebrity. There's people that want. And then they volunteer themselves up to go into conflict with somebody else who has what they want. It's kind of creepy to witness. I don't look at shit. I just don't. But he showed me a volley of comments, somebody using my image and my name to possibly help promote their channel in some weird way. I don't know what that does, but the amount of hate, there's some haters out there. Holy cow. There's some people out there that really hate me. I feel bad for them. I can't imagine losing that kind of energy in lifetime. Having tunnel vision on some stranger you don't know because he went on a YouTube channel and maybe I handed their ass one time on the channel publicly. I don't know, who knows, but there's some people out there that are a little twisted. And that reminds me of what I want to show you guys on that topic. Maybe some people here have that going on somewhere in life. Maybe they don't. I don't know. But I was listening to a podcast on the way home. Is that David PBD? Is that it? David podcast. Pretty sharp individuals on that podcast. They're really very sharp individuals. And one guy was pointing out And it's an easy example to show you guys because you know who they are and you probably know the backstory clearly. When years back, Rosie O'Donnell and Donald Trump were going at each other's throats. And she stayed focused on hating him for a handful of years. And it's sad to watch, right? But what they did was they posted up these two photos of her, then showed her from then compared to now. And she's had nonstop posting content or, videos, I guess, absolutely raging against Donald Trump for all these years. I think it ruined her career. But they showed how she's aged. And it really takes you back. It's like, wow, it doesn't matter how you feel about her or Trump or anybody. The point I'm trying to get across is if you let hate take up your time, if you truly let hate engulf your spirit, it's not good. You don't age very well. You're not very healthy. It causes cancer, man. Take a look at what poor Rosie's done to herself. I mean, I don't give a shit what anybody says. You do not look like that in that short of a time from being happy and doing what you love to do all the time and letting the hate go. Do you think? Wow. So, try not to hate. I'm not. Am I guilty of hate? I don't know if I'm guilty of hate. I'm guilty of being upset and want to protect and get even. I've definitely been guilty of getting even all my life. I've definitely, but I've never been one to go after somebody unprovoked. You know what I mean? I've never gone after innocent people because they've got something I want or I'm jealous. I've gone after the bullies. I've gone after the monsters, and I'm proud to say it. I look back, I wouldn't change a thing, but I don't believe I've had absolute hate in me daily, Sad thing to witness. Now, what do we got? Let's listen to this. Bunch of photos in this one. I hope I remember to put them on the video. Hi, how are you today, Steve? As I promised, here is my other encounter I had with an 8 to 9 foot silver bipedal beast. I was 15 years old and I lived on a reserve just outside of Karamias on a reserve called Lower Similkameen, aka Chopaka. I was dating a beautiful native girl. We were so in love, we were always together. We walked the woods always together, everywhere. We were never scared. We never ran into no wild animals except the odd rattlesnake. And now my Indian princess lived about 1 kilometer away from me. I would sneak out of my house about 10 o'clock every night and walk to her place. There was a very well-built trail. I knew this trail so well I could run it at nighttime. I sneaked out every night. And I would sit out her window and do what teens do. Now the encounter. This night was full moon. I snuck out of my house and went to my girlfriend's place just like any other night. And I spent at least 4 hours there. I remember looking at the clock in my girl's room and it said 3 a.m. So I gave my princess a kiss and started to walk back. I could see very well through the trees. I know how it is. I know how it is when you walk through the bush at night with a full moon. You can see well. I got about 200 yards away and stopped to relieve myself. I took a piss. I got really nervous just thinking about this. I just started to pull my fly up when I heard the bush popping like someone walking through the bush to my right at my 2 o'clock. I bent down right on the trail and waddled behind a small little bush. My heart was racing. I was thinking, fuck, did my girlfriend's dad finally find out I was seeing his daughter in the middle of the night? Yet it was my mom's boyfriend. Yet was it my mom's boyfriend coming out to kick my ass for sneaking out? All this is going through my mind till I can hear the noise getting closer. I could hear whatever or whoever was walking was very heavy. The noise definitely was bipedal, so I ruled out bears or cows or horses. Then as it got closer, I could make out a white or light gray, tall, bulky shape walking toward me as like it was going to cut me off on the trail. That's when I pissed myself, because I could see this thing's arms moving, swaying like a walking motion. Then I looked toward the ground and could make out 2 huge legs walking with knees bent. By this time, I was just about to the trail I was on. By this time, it was just about to the trail I was on, about 30 feet from me. At the time, I never knew what I was looking at. It kind of reminded me of a dirty white polar bear standing up. I thought, as I could only make out parts of it, as it walked through the trees. I was totally scared now. All this is happening so fast, I was thinking, should I run? Do I hide? As I still never figured out what I was looking at. And then all of a sudden it stepped out onto the trail. And I got my first good look at this thing. The trail was at least 4 feet wide, and the beast's upper body was as wide as the trail. Then it all of a sudden stopped and turned and looked right at me. Then when my stomach started turning and feeling sick, the feeling of being this scared is indescribable. Your body feels effing weird. This beast turned his whole upper body and was looking right at me. It had no neck. Its head was too small for its huge body. Its arms were long, and all this time its legs were bent. I remember seeing its huge hands and fingers moving like it was touching his thumb with his fingers, like it was squishing a ball. The motion. His face looked more monkey, but it had a huge flat nose. It had a long gray whitish hair. I could not tell the length. His dark eyes were piercing, and his face was like a grumpy old man's. A grumpy old man's look. That's what I got the impression of it. It had a pronounced brow ridge. That's when I knew it was looking right at me. It moved its body forward toward me, as to get a better look at me. That's when I closed my eyes and I began to pray. I had goosebumps all over. I was thinking, what's next? Is it coming for me? Should I run? And then I heard it start to walk, and I opened my eyes and I caught glimpses of it walking toward the road adjacent to the trail. Then I heard the sound of barbed wire squeaking. And that's when I knew for sure it crossed the road. And I ran back to my girl's house and literally jumped through her window and she said I was sweating like a dog and had pissed myself. She asked what happened. I could not talk about it right away. I stayed till daybreak and ran home. I told her later that day what I saw, and all she said was her grandma said the Sasquatch has always been in these woods. Now I never snuck out again. I love your channel. Keep up the good work, Steve. And on the map, my house is in red circle. Girlfriend is in blue. The trail is yellow. Purple is where the encounter happened. Green, direction of the Sasquatch. That's scary, dude. And I got the map. I don't need to show it with the world. We don't need to show them where your house is, all right, man? But I got you. Real close to the U.S. border. South Caramias. Huh. Wow. Wow. Appreciate you mailing that in. I'm sorry if it took me a while to get to it. It's just the nature of the beast here. Beings. It's Talos email. I guess I better do my quick little look around. I'm not in grizzly bear territory, but guess what happened yesterday? My neighbor across the road texted me. Very A-type capable guy, hunter. And he said that a huge bear chased him last night at 9 o'clock right across the road from the house, and he had to jump into his tool trailer and slam the door to avoid getting chewed on. Crazy, right? 1 in a million, right across from my house. You never know. You gotta look around. Hi, Steve. 37 years ago, I was half a mile from Tippy Dam on the west side of Michigan. It was just daylight when I was going for a jog down the power line to Tippy Dam and back. Our cabin was in the woods with a winding driveway. I got to the end of the driveway and was going to stretch when I noticed a furry, dirty, grayish-brown thing laying along a fallen tree about 50 yards from the road. It caught my interest because it was such a contrast from what I normally saw looking in the woods when pulling out of the driveway. I stepped across the road and just started into the woods to check it out when it stood up, and in a blink of an eye, it took off on 2 legs. It was broad, fur-covered, and was probably 6.5 to 7 feet tall. I'll never forget that sight. I ran back to the cabin shaking like a leaf and tried telling my mom and girlfriend what I saw. They laughed and did not believe a word I said. They thought that I was suffering from delusions, from too much wine the night before. It was a girls' weekend. I was shaking and crying and couldn't believe their reaction. I was born a farm girl with a fishing pole in one hand and a gun in the other, and I knew what I saw. I'll never forget that sight, and I never want to repeat it. No one has ever believed me, and think that I'm just chicken shit. Take care, keep keeping it real. Brenda, you found your people. It's all good. You get a chance, you might want to send them this video and ask them to watch it. And then they will know that they're not being that smart of human beings. Just minor details, title of this email. Steve, great stories, keep it up. I tried to send a PM via Facebook, not sure you saw that. Nope. In short, when you were in the cabin, it was hitting the wall next to you. I believe it was because it knew you were inside and had seen you through the window. I was wondering how long it was between the smacks and whether or not it was taking the time to see reactions/movements inside the cabin. I hunt about 30 acres in Michigan. There is 100% some crazy shit happening there. 4 to 6 inch diameter trees snapped over a trails we ride quads on. Piled up branches blocking trails that were huge and no way came from anywhere nearby. Residents tell me of crazy loud noises from the woods, repeated stomping that shook their house. Numerous trees that somehow seemed to constantly fall across the trails. I've been out by myself, could smell the rancid stink of dead rotting animal, and never found the carcass. I'm still skeptical in my mind, but there can only be one answer. Thanks, Jeff. Now, I don't think whatever's beating on that wall, it was completely on the opposite side of the house, the cabin, sorry, where the window was on the other side. There's a window there at the end. There's a window right there across the floor, the door right there, bedroom doorway right there, and the long wall behind me with the couch on it and the wood stove right behind me. And I was getting beat on. I don't know, it sounded like it was at the top of the wall anyway, right above me. So, there you go. That was a freaking scary moment. That was really, really scary. I definitely wasn't going outside. All I had was a .303 British Lee Enfield World War II Army rifle with open sights and a 9-shot magazine that slid into those things, 9 or 10. I think he had 9 and 1 in the pipe, 10. That's all I had. I calmly got up, got out of the bedroom, loaded it, and put it on the couch beside me and sat there. Pitch black outside. What else are you going to do, right? 2 experiences. Man, it's cold here. Everything's frosted up. You can't really see it, but it's frozen. I think I got a pocket warmer right here. I almost cut this finger off. I ringed it like a corn dog on a stick, it looked like, and I got the nerve cut. You can thump pretty good with the hand warmer on it. Hi Steve, I enjoy your No BS YouTube channel. I've had a couple of encounters with these beasts I'd like to share with you. First, let me explain. I grew up in the woods hunting and fishing and hiking, etc., and I know what the animals are out there. In other words, I know what a bear is and what is not. I was born and raised in Bellingham, Washington, which is where these 2 stories took place. And I've spent a lot of time fishing in BC in the Caribou. So I'm quite familiar with your area, just as a side note. Anyway, the first encounter took place in a small neighborhood near where I grew up. Granted, it was a long time ago. I was 9 years old at the time, and I'm 57 now, but I remember it like it was last night. My brother and I were staying at a friend's house and sitting on his front porch. We could hear some dogs barking in the distance, which were getting closer and closer to us. Before long, there was this hairy, man-like thing running across the lawns of the houses across the street from us with about 5 or 6 dogs chasing it. No shit. Weird. It appeared to be about 7 or 8 feet tall and was covered in hair from top to bottom. It was running very fast on 2 legs with its arms kind of stiff down to its sides. It didn't fit the normal description of a Bigfoot as it was kind of slender looking. Maybe juvenile? And that was on the outskirts of Bellingham where there was a lot of woods around at the time. The occurrence was 4 years later. The second occurrence was 4 years later when my brother and I were together on a deer hunting trip up the North Fork of the Nooksack River. This area, incidentally, is known for some sightings. My brother and I met up in some green timber. It was snowing pretty heavy at the time, with big, heavy, wet flakes which were accumulating at a fairly rapid pace around on the ground. We came up on some tracks that looked like human barefoot tracks, but they were about 15 to 17 inches long. Like I said, it was snowing pretty good at the time, and there was no snow in the tracks, so this thing was there just ahead of us. The snow was heavy and wet, so the tracks were as perfect as they could be. We could clearly make out each toe, ball of the foot, heel, etc. But unfortunately, it was way before everyone carried cell phones, so no pics. We followed the tracks for a couple hundred yards into some heavier brush and decided that we should turn around and head back to the pickup as it was getting to be dusk. Feel free to share. Maybe through you, somebody will believe me. Not that I really care that much. I know what I saw. And hey, maybe instead of, quote, honesty, end quote, you could call your new podcast, I Know What I Saw. Or not. Regards, Jim Suggs. Jim, you found your people. It's okay to share here, and you're amongst others. Many, many others have seen the same thing. Many. And who gives a shit what anybody thinks, right? Who cares? I think after I do this, I'm going to go farther down the valley. I'm at the end of an old deactivated spur road. I'm looking up at timberline up there. I want to see these dirt banks along the road, see if there's any kind of sign of deer or whatever running around here, but it's pretty bleak. Pretty bleak. This is titled, You'll Want to Hear This. You're right, I will. I do. Hello, Steve. My name is... I'm 21 years old and I live in Ketchikan, Alaska. I was born and raised here, have lived here all my life, and have no intention of leaving. I don't blame you, man. Alaska is frickin' awesome. Anyway, I've been hunting and fishing since as long as I can remember. I currently commercial fish and weld for a living. Just giving you some background on myself so you don't think I'm just another dipshit trying to get some attention, because I'm not. I just want to share a story with you about something that happened to me a few years ago. I don't think you're a dipshit, my man. Share away. I've been a blacktail hunting machine like yourself for the past 7 or 8 years. I get no better enjoyment than hiking the Alpine and killing a monster buck. But anyway, about 4 years ago, me and a friend of mine went on a mid-September deer hunt over on Prince of Wales Island. We were hunting Lancaster Harbor, which is located in Chomley Sound. I've hunted this place many times before and never had anything strange happen, even though I had heard stories of these beings living in those hills. The area we were hunting is just an old secluded logging road system like many others in the southeast. It doesn't hook into any other roads. There's a barge landing and that's it. I'm sure you've been on many like it. When we arrived, there was currently nobody else in the entire sound, and certainly nobody else hunting these roads that we were on. So we arrived that afternoon and unloaded the bikes from the troller that we were on and headed for the beach. We rode up to the top of the mountain where there was some good clear cuts to glass. And when we got there, my partner and I split up and went about 20 yards from each other. And he started blowing his deer call to see if anything might stand up, even though it was a little early in the season. And keep in mind, where we are standing, we can see all the way to the water and pretty much the entire sound. About 3 minutes after he blew his call, we seen these two does about 100 yards away, but they just didn't look right. They looked uneasy, like something was bothering them. But we were too far away to matter to them. And right about the time we spotted them, we started hearing these extremely loud bang, bang, bang of what sounded like giant rocks being smashed together roughly 150 to 200 yards below us in the timber. This went on for a good 3 or 4 minutes and was super loud and strange. The only thing I can compare it to is rocks being smashed by an excavator in a rock pit. But at the time, neither me nor my partner had ever had any weird experiences in the woods, and he'd been hunting this area for over 25 years. So we just kind of penciled it up as whatever in our heads and tried to move on with our hunt that afternoon. On our way back down the mountain, we were riding through a flat muskegee area when we came across a pile of rocks, stacked. The largest on the bottom, tapering to the smallest on the top, approximately 2.5 to 3 feet tall. We just rode through this area an hour or two before and did not see these rocks on the side of the road. And trust me, there's no way we would have missed them. When we stopped and took a look at this pile of rocks, we immediately got a giant whiff of something foul. The smell was almost unbearable, like a dead carcass was near, but we knew there was nothing because there were no birds or predators anywhere around us. At this point, we knew something was up, and the Sasquatch thoughts started running through our heads. After a bit of contemplation on the rocks and smell, we continued on and rode about 15 minutes west towards a different clear-cut system. About 3/4 of the way there, we stopped in an area with large old growth on both sides of the road and had a quick snack. We were sitting there bullshitting when all of a sudden we started hearing this jingle, jingle, jingle. Basically, it sounded like someone was standing in the thick of the woods, maybe 15 to 20 yards away, shaking what sounded like a little doggy collar. It was a very unusual sound, and to hear it in the middle of nowhere made us very uneasy. No doubt. This went on for maybe a minute or two before it stopped. I grabbed my gun and stepped down in the ditch to go take a look in the woods and heard it faintly one more time, and then it went away. When I walked back up to my bike, we both got another whiff of this unmistakable stink that we could not pinpoint what it was or where it was coming from. Keep in mind, we rode 15 minutes at least 20 miles per hour. There's no way that the smell that we smelled earlier was traveling all the way to where we were now. So this is where things get really weird and a little freaky. That evening, we returned to the boat. We were sitting around talking and eating dinner. We were anchored about 100 yards from the beach, where our bikes were sitting. I stepped outside to grab a water, and when all of a sudden this overwhelmingly loud scream started echoing through the bay. This scream made the hair on the back of our neck stand straight up. I've been charged by brown bears, by bull moose, and been in various other stressful situations in the wilderness, but I've never been so uneasy and uncomfortable than when me and my partner started hearing these screams. The only way I can describe this scream was it sounded like something out of a horror movie, almost like someone being gutted alive, or a woman being strangled to death. Sorry for the graphic mental image, but I've never heard anything more horrifying in my life. Even now, writing this down is making me uncomfortable just thinking about the sound. This went on for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, off and on for 5 or 10 seconds at a time. So we sat there shitting our pants, so dumbfounded as to what we were hearing that neither one of us even thought to try and record it on our phones. Neither one of us slept that night. The next morning we got our bikes and got the F out of there. I've never been back since. A year later I seen something back in a different area located in Ketchikan. I was hiking up a logging road in the fog. The fog lifted for just a split second, and I could see across the valley where another clear cut had been shaved into the mountainside. I glanced over and seen this giant black thing, maybe 250 yards away, standing straight up on a stump. At first, with the blind eye, I immediately thought, shit, that's a big-ass black bear. And why is it standing straight up? I reached down, pulled my binoculars, located on my chest mount. I reached down and pulled up my binoculars, located on a chest mount. What I seen then is forever burned into my head. Standing straight up like a human on a stump was this 7 to 8 foot jet black thing with a slightly lighter colored face, and it was staring right at me. And there was no mistake as to what this thing was. I knew immediately what I'd seen. It only gave me maybe 3 or 4 seconds to look at it before it jumped off the stump and dove into a patch of huckleberry bush. I sat there for at least half an hour waiting for it to reappear, and it never did. It was out in the middle of a clear cut, so trust me, If it was a bear, I would have seen it moving around one way or another after standing there that long looking for it. Once I knew I wasn't going to be able to see it again, I hightailed it back out of there. I felt scared and uneasy the whole way out. I ran into 2 different bucks that I would have killed any other day, but that day I wanted nothing more than just to get the F out of there. I went home and have since then hunted that same spot many other times and have never seen anything weird there. I wish I would have never seen or heard any of these things, and I always thought I was kind of crazy for even thinking about them until I started watching your videos. Anyway, that's what happened. I don't give a flying fuck what anybody thinks about it, because I know what I've seen. I just thought I'd share the stories with you. Anyway, thanks for reading. You can share this story in your videos if you want. Just don't use my name. If not, it's all good either way. I just wanted to share the encounter with someone who actually taken it into consideration. Thanks sincerely. Okay, I hope I didn't start off with your name, did I? Damn it, you said your name in the beginning. I gotta stop the video. Oh, and put a note on there verbally. Check his name at the beginning of the story. And there you go. Another member of the club, and I appreciate your honesty, man. You found the right place. Send me some blacktail pictures one day if you're still here hanging out. Love to see them. I'd love to hunt up there one time. I was on Kodiak, no, Afghanak Island. Man, there's blacktail everywhere. I always thought I'd want to go back there and hunt them one day. There you go. Another one. Another good, honest person coming here to share the truth. This is titled, Rath Trevor Provincial Park, Sasquatch. Man, there's so much around there. That's right over here. Hello, Steve. Please don't get offended or add what the F, but I wanted to add how this creature walked off away from me. I must add that I shook my shoulders and partially got up while still laying down on the bed, bracing myself with my elbows to better look at this creature. And just as I shook my shoulders, it too flexed and shook its shoulders back at me. Then in a few short steps, it proceeded to come really close to me by lowering itself down on, I suspect, all fours as its head came right up to the back window, glaring at me with buck teeth. Then it moved to my left against the passenger side window with an upright head filling up the entire window with his face. I grabbed my crotch so as not to take a piss, and its look on its face was one of bewilderment as I saw its eyebrows slant upward like an angled roofline. Then I hid next to the comforter, and it turned and walked away upright past my car. I vowed never to camp again, and for the last 19 years I'd done just that. I never felt so alone and helpless as I felt that night. It's been a struggle, and I had nightmares for the longest time, wondering if that creature would come back to haunt me by sticking its head up against my bedroom window at night again. Just knowing I'm safe in the suburbs relaxes me now. So if you want to add this little tidbit, so be it, Steve. You can get a hold of me at. I live in Surrey now. When this went down, I lived on the quay in New Westminster, British Columbia. Okay, man. You are very popular. P.S. I told my story to friends but never publicly mentioned it. This is the first time. And I wish you could choose this one over some others, but who knows? Kind regards, Terry. Okay, man. I guess there's more. I don't know if we shared previous or not, but it sounds like you're camping in your car at Rath Trevor Provincial Park. Rath Trevor Provincial Park. And a lot goes on there all the time. Why? I don't know. I don't know why. All around me. From here to there and beyond, right? I know people who've had their face in the car filled with the face of one of these people. Inches away from theirs. This is titled, Scary Shit Up There, Kid. Hey Steve, I found your channel last fall and was originally very interested in your bear stories. I've been wanting to go to Alaska on a photo journey and thought maybe I could get some tips on how not to get turned into bear poop. I remember thinking, if there's anyone on the planet who would have come into contact with Bigfoot, it would be you. And then you started with the Bigfoot stories. I'm 59 years old and been around the block a few times, and I like how you have a no BS attitude. I've clicked on a couple Bigfoot channels in the past, but could never get more than a few seconds into them before the BS meter went off the chart. We live in northern Minnesota on the Chippewa National Forest. I've never actually seen anything myself, but I have a few incidents I'd like to share with you anyway. I do know a few guys, mostly native, who have seen these things. There's this old guy in town named Dewey Johnson, and my friend used to drop Dewey off in the boonies every fall, and he would live in the woods for about a month with only 12 gauge and an iron frying pan. Sounds like heaven to me. When he was done, he would walk back to town. One day my buddy saw Dewey sitting in the restaurant and asked him how his hunting had been in the Sucker Bay area. He told my friend he didn't go out there anymore. After several whys from my buddy, he finally confessed with his hair-lip voice. There's some scary shit out there, kid, and they might come right into the fire at night. He did not elaborate on what he'd seen or what scared him so badly that he never went into the woods again. Obviously, this doesn't give us the warm fuzzies when walking into our deer hunting area in the dark. Anyway, the same friend, Randy, who is Chippewa, and I were back in the woods about a mile one day, rattling for whitetail. That means smashing antlers together for all you non-hunters. Could be effective. It had just snowed about half a foot. When walking back to the car, we saw some bear tracks join our trail and were heading out the same way we came in. They had just logged some of the area recently, and when we came out to a landing area, which was a circle about 40 yards across, flat as a pancake with fresh snow, the bear tracks stopped right at the edge. They stopped. There were no trees around, but we started looking up anyway to figure out where this thing disappeared to. It's still a mystery. But we warn everybody to be, aware of the flying bears. This was probably about 15 years ago. A few years ago, I was walking on the same trail and I started getting the EBGBs. A wave of paranoia swept over me, and here I was on a sunny fall day, about 2 in the afternoon, with a fully loaded 30-06 in my hands, and I told myself I was being silly. I took another step, but I couldn't shake the feeling. So I said out loud, "Okay, I'm leaving. This area is yours." And then finally, sorry to ramble on here, the last fall I was hunting near a swamp we called Death Valley. And the brush is very thick for about 100 yards near the edge of this thing. I was in clear hardwoods behind 3 oak trees, about 75 yards south of the thick stuff, when 20 minutes before dark, I heard what sounded like a high-pitched loon calling, but it lasted way longer and had a more throaty sound. And then another one started doing the same thing about 150 yards west of me near a beaver dam. These two went on and on until dark. I should have been scared, but I was actually trying to see what the hell was making that noise. It was close enough that it seemed I should be able to see it. And this is about 2 miles from the bear track spot. I've been in the woods all my life and I've never heard anything like this. I've heard lynx scream, been in the middle of a pack of wolves howling, heard rabbits scream, etc., but never heard anything remotely like this. I never did see anything. Then a few days later, Randy was hunting across the road from the bear track spot, and I was about a mile from him. And it was one of those nights you could hear a mouse 50 yards away. And we met at the Jeep after dark. And the very first thing he asked me was if I heard it. I said I hadn't heard anything. He said just before dark he heard this knocking sound west of him near Death Valley. He said it sounded just like someone taking a baseball bat and whacking it against a tree, over and over. He got out of his stand, and the sound was then coming from the northwest. And as he was walking east towards the road, the knocking was coming straight north of him. I said, "That's weird," and didn't really think much about it until I was in a hotel room the next week. I work in Alabama and Georgia, and decided I'd Google tree knocking. And as you can imagine, I hit the jackpot for Bigfoot stories, LOL. When I told Randy what Google said the knocking was, he didn't think it was too funny. I've had several weird things happen through the years, and after listening to some of your stories, some things are starting to add up. Like things hitting the house so hard it rattled the windows. This area has a rich history of weird stuff going on, and we even have a lake called Lake Wendigo, which itself is on Star Island in Cass Lake. I won't get into how the lake got its name, but it's also some scary shit, kid. Thanks for listening. Dale Church, Cass Lake, Minnesota. Dale, appreciate you coming forward, my man. And there is some scary shit out here. Big time. Always has been, always will be. Pretty quiet around here, isn't it? Pretty quiet around here. I am from Skagway, Alaska. Story about Liard River Hot Springs. Been there many times, and I got some stories about there too. Hey Steve, I have a story from Skagway, Alaska, and also one from Liard River / Muncho Lake. Liard River Hot Springs specifically. I lived in Skagway for 10 years. My 17-year-old daughter was born in Whitehorse. I used to know Carcross and Atlin Lakes, okay? I spent some time in the backcountry and lots of cities too. We used to drive the Alcan every year from Skagway to Houston, Texas to visit relatives. Whoa, that's a drive. I'm originally from Anchorage, but live in Texas now. My dad is a pilot for Wayne Air, Alaska. I spent some time in truly remote areas. Mostly never feeling afraid. Bears, moose at close range, no problemo, even as a kid. But these creatures are a different animal. I've been trying to make sense of it for years. I don't talk to folks about it because they think you're insane. My dad is a bush pilot too, and he thinks I'm nuts. Now I live in Central Texas. Everyone here is in multi-dimensional effing denial about all things. Nobody would last a day under truly adverse conditions. Another story. Your last video mentioned the Nephilim struck a chord. I'm not a religious dude, but the evil versus good thing is rising to the surface. I've seen and felt evil, and it made me feel like a tiny child, in person, in the woods, no less, when I normally had no rational fear. End of email. What the hell? All right, I have to type this as look into and email this dude because I want to hear it, especially because I've been there numerous times, in the mountains all around there. That's remote. You guys can Google it up. Liard, Liard Hot Springs. And here's a story that I'll share with you about there. Years ago, it's a real nice place. It's got a wooden deck built around the hot springs. There's change rooms, railings, steps into the hot springs. Middle of the day, bunch of people in there. Normal-sized black bear came down, decided he's going to eat a human. Grabbed a kid, had him on the deck, was killing him. The mom jumped on the bear to stop and save her boy. The bear killed her too. And a guy we know from Fort Nelson, who passed a long time big game guide, he jumped in and the bear killed him too. You can look it up. That made a lot of waves in the planet and in the news. Very unfortunate. I think it's just the next year, the year after that too. Same thing, a bunch of people are in the hot springs there at Liard. And a grizzly bear came down, walking on the deck, everyone to that side of the pool, and he walked around to that side, everyone to this side, and they did that a few times, then he left, thank God. And then Muncho Lake, a friend of mine lives up there, said that one time driving in the dark at Muncho, he thought he saw a moose run across right in front of the truck in the headlights. But then he realized the legs, the kneecaps were bending the wrong way to be a moose. What else could do that, right? So I hope we get the rest of the story from this man, somehow. Here we go. Who's next? Man, it's quiet here, isn't it? Really. How Bella Coola Sasquatch hunts for himself. This ought to be interesting. Hands are frickin' freezing. Hey Steve. Cam here from Maple Ridge, British Columbia. Relaying an incident my cousin had approximately 15 years ago in Bella Coola. He and a co-worker were working as arborists, sent by their company to survey a portion of forestry land and needed road access through a native band's land reserve for access. Time of year would probably be in spring, early summer. Just as I said, it was quiet. A helicopter. Those helicopters annoy the shit out of me. Sorry. Just had to pause and wait and see if he's going to come right over top of us to get louder or not. Sounds like he's going by down the valley. Due to the fact they needed access to the land, the contract included they hire a native band member to act as a guide and accompany them through the area. 3 men, now in total, headed up in the 4x4 service vehicle to the contract area they needed to survey. Once they arrived to the land contract, they started walking the roads, surveying the area, doing their thing, and not too long after, they came upon a deer carcass. This deer had been gutted, but by what he said was without a knife. The deer had been ripped open, hung in a tree, with a branch stabbed through its neck at approximately 12 feet high. No guts or entrails left behind, only this deer. No hunters, nothing. They continued to walk the area when he stated they could hear something following and pacing them through the bush to their side, and would stop when they would stop. At some point they could see a dark figure start to dash through the bush, and also described that infamous Sasquatch smell, but unable to fully see the figure due to the bush and vegetation. And at this point, the native guide stated that they needed to leave. They headed back to the truck and stated, "Sasquatch is here, we must go now," or something along those lines, but he was panicking. Why is there a helicopter almost every frickin' time, right? My cousin and his co-worker, who were young men at the time, full of testosterone and stupidity, decided it was a better idea when they got back to the truck to retrieve their 12-gauge shotguns they carried for bear protection and give whatever was flanking them a chase, in which they did, against the wishes of the guide who locked himself inside the truck. They ran back up this access road, and sure as shit, this thing was there, and they gave chase. He said this thing would run just out of sight, but they would see flashes of black as it ran as if it was playing with them. They soon came upon a dried-up creek with a small sandbar island in the middle of it, with a big patch of trees. He stated they walked over to the patch of trees on this sandbar and found what he said looked like an igloo woven from branches. They both walked over and looked into it, only to find another gutted deer. But this one's body cavity was stuffed full of green pine needles, that he assumed was for preservation. And also, this one had its head missing. At this point, the two of them freaked out, realized how stupid they were, and ran as fast as they could back to the truck to find this poor native guy hiding and shaking like a leaf on the floorboards of the truck. The company apparently lost the contract and access through the reserve due to the actions of their employees. Anyways, I thought it was an interesting account, but not in regards to whether or not these creatures exist, but more so some insight on how Sasquatch hunts himself, and also a good reason why this topic may be so hush-hush. When money and forestry industries get affected, lots of tracks, sighting stories, and all types of evidence out there, which are all awesome, but this is the first account I've heard of someone finding Sasquatch hunting, processing, and curing its meat. Thought I'd share. Anyways, be safe and take it easy. Cheers. That's a different one. Never heard that one before. We've seen pictures of carcasses hanging in trees. Quite a few of them, actually. Nothing ever fresh, though. Seen skeletons hanging up. Deer bones. Had a couple guys had a fresh liver left on top of a stump not far from my place. Hunting in a slash like this. Had a fresh liver left on a stump for him or something weird. I think they saw it too. I don't know. I don't remember. That's a different one. I wonder how many sleuths could look up what exactly is in pine needles and how is there something in pine needles that would affect the flesh of game or beef, whatever. What would that do? Me, I'm a hunter. What would stuffing the chest of a kill with anything green do? As far as I know, nothing. As far as I know, what would pine needles do inside the chest of a kill? Don't know. Flavor. Maybe flavor, I don't know. Or maybe it's a side dish. Maybe it's a salad. You never know, right? I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? And I'll bet that native guy had somebody walk up to the truck and look in at him. I'll bet you. No other reason he'd be curled up on the floor freaking out. Well, who knows? Who knows? Maybe he's seen them before and was absolutely petrified, thinking he was about to live the worst nightmare of his life. Anyway, I'm going to go, I'm going to drive out of this road, hit the main logging road, and I'm going to head her farther up the valley and see what I can see, just because I've never gone there. And then I will probably head home. It's weird over here, and it really sucks in the island of the gates. There's gates everywhere. Some embarrassing deal was made years ago, making all of this land that you can see everywhere considered private land for some frickin' logging company. And there are gates everywhere. And if you're not out by, I don't know what time it is, 6 o'clock or something, they shut the gate. Can't get out till the morning. It's so cringe. It's just so cringe. Gates. Cringe. All these mountains, all these forests belonging to a company. Pfft, kiss my ass. Scumbags. Scumbags. Share my story, howtohunt.com. Get it to us. And if you want to throw it down in a subscription for, I don't know, for this month or something, and put $5 towards feeding these kids, you're more than welcome. Or not. I'm going to feed a piss load of kids. A whole pile of them. Like a lot. This Christmas. Share my story, howtohunt.com. Get your truth shared with the people, alright? Get shared. Alright, I gotta get moving. I'm gonna sit here and stare and gaze at the sights forever. I gotta get moving. I'll be back tomorrow.